Thank you for the folks who are tuning in. Good morning. Welcome to Tuesday. It is the last day of March 2020, a month that will live in infamy.
Oh my God.
Probably not more than the month of April, which will probably be the most infamous month of this whole decade, maybe. Who knows? This is Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. It's our way of bringing our programming to you on the internet, and we're really honored and excited to have Heather Knight, San Francisco politics reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. She covers City Hall. And one quick note, or two quick notes. One, if you have a question for Heather, you can type it into the Q&A. This is interactive, this is participatory, so please go ahead and type your question in the Q&A box at any time. And also, if you are so inclined, we'd really appreciate you becoming a sponsor of Manny's. There's a link in the chat box. It's joining.org/o/Manny's. It's $36 a month. And we're asking everyone to become a sponsor so that we can keep doing what we're doing. All right. Heather Knight.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And thanks for doing what you're doing. I feel like good reporting on politics is so important right now.
It is.
Tell me how you are thinking about what you write. How are you structuring how you plan what you're going to write in the kind of days and weeks ahead?
Mm-hmm. It's been a struggle. I'm getting more emails and tweets and phone calls and just tips from all over the city of things I should be looking into. I never could do it by myself because it's just more than literally I've ever seen coming in with ideas and directions to look. So I'm passing a lot on to my colleagues. Pretty much the whole Chronicle is dedicated to virus coverage right now. There's no professional sports to cover, so we don't really need a whole sports.
Yes, I interviewed Larry Baer, the CEO of the Giants, and there wasn't much to talk about with what's going on with the Giants right now.
Right.
In terms of playing, but there's obviously they're doing a testing facility in their parking lot.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, so I'm really also trying to balance serious and more inspiring, lighthearted features because I feel like you can get so depressed reading just nonstop. This is how many deaths, this is how many tested positive, this is what's going on in the hospitals. If it's only that, then it can get really disheartening.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to bring in, like today I have a column about just this sweet thing that's happening in the Castro where a bagpiper who lives there is going up to his roof and playing every night at sunset, and neighbors are coming out from all over Noe Valley and the Castro and all over on their balconies and roofs and sidewalks to listen with drinks in their hands. And it's a real community thing. So trying to disperse
I'm going to try to hear him tonight.
Oh, good. You should. He's amazing. Hal Wilkes.
Yes, I saw that article and I'm jealous, and I want to hear the Pied Piper. I want to hear the bagpiping. It is so inspiring. Are there a lot of stories like that, or are you kind of having to sift through a lot to get to them?
There's a lot of stories. Even I live in Glen Park. I have 2 little boys, so trying to do my work from home while balancing out entertaining and educating them. We're trying to get outside every afternoon, and a really sweet thing has started in Glen Park where people are putting teddy bears in their windows, and so you go on a bear hunt. There's this map that's updated online where all the bears are all over the neighborhood, and so we go hunt for bears.
I love that. It's so interesting as this thing gets extended, so we now have another month of it. I do wonder how people are going to get creative with gathering. Mm-hmm. I was walking down Castro Street and I ran into a couple. Obviously we were distanced from each other, but there's this queer nightlife fun, and they're doing a Sunday called Quarantine. There's a tea dance, basically like a party online using Zoom, and people are doing different arts in their living room and dancing. And I hope that San Francisco, the birthplace of Burning Man and the counterculture movement and the youth movement and all that, can actually show our colors and maybe try to be funky and weird. I hope that we keep doing that. Do you feel like we're gonna see more of that over the next couple weeks?
I'm seeing incredible creativity from people. Drag queens are performing online, musicians of all sorts performing online. There's karaoke online. I want to give a shout out to Potrero Hill artist Wendy McNaughton, who is doing live Instagram drawing classes every morning at 10. So
Wow.
there's just so many cool things going on in the city right now, because people are being creative in ways that they can connect.
So tell me about reporting on City Hall right now. Are you, well, first of all, so I'm just clear, do you report on all the supervisors and the mayor and all of City Hall, or do you have a specific part of it that you focus on?
There's usually, well, City Hall is closed right now, so it's hard to cover it other than on the phone and text and things. But usually there's three of us based in the press room there, so
Yeah.
there's one reporter for the mayor, one for the board, and then I'm a columnist, so I kind of get to pick and choose what I write about. I tend to write a lot about homelessness
Yeah.
and social services.
How do you think the mayor's doing?
I think she's doing great. I've been somewhat of a critic of hers. I think that the city has been really slow to respond to the skyrocketing homeless numbers and our drug crisis, affordability crisis,
Yeah.
everything, that is going on in the city. Normally, I feel like City Hall is so slow to respond, but they've really stepped up their game. I had a column in the paper last weekend about how it's been really inspiring to see that they've just cut through all this red tape. Like normally it will take 9 months to hire one city employee, which is crazy. Department heads hate that. Like the head of Muni needs a bus driver. He doesn't want to wait 9 months to get the bus driver. But since they declared an emergency, they can get rid of a lot of those rules. And so they hired 82 nurses on the spot last week. So I think we need to do more of that all the time, not just when there's a virus.
Do you think that's possible? Do you think that we're going to see like maybe a long-term shift in how the city operates based on this? I talked to Chester Boudin, Jeff Kaczynski, and a couple other kind of city leaders. And the question I asked them, is maybe how can we take this crisis and use it as an opportunity?
I hope so. I mean, it's a tiring pace to be working at, so I don't think people could keep up these super long days with no days off permanently. But I do hope this idea that we need to act fast in an emergency continues, because we do have real emergencies that don't have to do with the virus, like homelessness, drugs, affordability, everything else.
Specifically homelessness. I mean, people have been talking about the crisis on our streets as an emergency for a while, but we haven't been able to, really use major kind of movements to actually do something about it. There's some whispers that we may actually be able to house a good chunk of the people who are living on the streets right now due to the crisis. Do you feel like that's actually possible?
Well, I'm inspired to see new creative ways. Like they are, now that the hotels are pretty much vacant because no tourists are coming and staying in them. The city is contracting with hotels to put up people who need to be quarantined, or healthcare workers, also homeless people. They're opening more shelters. A huge shelter for 600 people is opening at Moscone Center, where they'll actually have experts who can help with their drug addictions, mental health issues, physical health issues, right there taking care of them. So things like that are happening way faster than they ever have, and I hope that that can continue.
And folks who have questions for San Francisco Chronicle columnist Heather Knight, you can type them in now in the Q&A box. Tell me about the board. How do you feel like the board is doing vis-a-vis the mayor? Do you feel like they're getting a lot done? Are they being productive? Do you feel like there's a good working relationship right now between the board and the mayor? Kind of what are you hearing and seeing about as regards to the Board of Supervisors?
Well, they are helping to staff the Emergency Operations Center at Moscone Center. That's where hundreds of city workers are stationed every day, spread out 6 feet apart. And they're representing 26 departments: police, public health, human services, homelessness. Everything is based there so they can have easy contact, because crises and new information is coming in, constantly. And so they all need to be together. And so the board, rather than having all 11 go there and just hang out, they came up with a pretty smart idea, I thought, which is rotating through. So every week they're sending a different supervisor to be there, and they get questions from the other 10 supervisors and find answers at the center, as well as constituent questions. They have a whole running list online, a spreadsheet of all the questions they have, and then whether it was answered or not, what was the answer. And they're also just pitching in. So I think that so far people are getting along pretty well.
Do you feel like a particular part of the city has been hit hardest by this virus? Or are you hearing that?
I think people are really worried about the Tenderloin, because so many homeless people are still outside. They haven't been able to move enough people in. And so they're trying to get people to space tents 6 feet apart, but that's not always easy to do on our crowded sidewalks. So I'm hearing about encampments where there's still 10 or 15 people living right next to each other. So an outbreak could happen at any point.
And I did a talk with Del Seymour about the Tenderloin, and he described that people feel abandoned in the Tenderloin. They feel left behind. They also feel like the information hasn't really sunk in to the ground level there. And he was pretty, upset about how the Tenderloin, is kind of, mountains are not being moved for the Tenderloin, at least what he felt.
No, they never are. That's always been, as people call it, especially Supervisor Matt Haney refers to it as a containment zone. And he said there's long been a conspiracy at City Hall to just keep everything in the Tenderloin, and then nobody else will care so much about it. Like if you had what goes on in the Tenderloin in Noe Valley one day, it would all be dealt with within hours, but as long as it can be left in the Tenderloin, sometimes city officials don't seem to take it as much of an emergency.
And you don't think do you think that might change given all this?
I would hope so, but so far I don't think it has. I think, this whole pandemic is really bringing to light income inequality, which is always an obvious point in San Francisco, but it's more so hitting home now because it's so much easier for people in single family homes with their own kitchens and bathrooms and easy access to grocery stores and who have jobs where they can work from home on their computers to just survive. It may be boring and frustrating, but it's not the end of the world for them. Whereas people in the Tenderloin on the sidewalks, this could be the end of the world for them.
Right. So let's talk about that. And you think, eat and breathe and write San Francisco. You've been doing it for a very long time. And a lot of people are talking about the economic kind of what the results of this are going to be on the economic and social fabric of the city after it's all said and done. Do you feel like, what are you thinking are going to be the kind of long-term effects on the economics of the city and also the culture of San Francisco as a result of all this?
Well, Controller Ben Rosenfield just came out with new predictions a couple of hours ago that are pretty dire in terms of our money situation. Our current annual budget is $12.3 billion, and he's predicting with the shortfall in business taxes and other revenue due to this crisis that we're going to see a loss of between 1.1 billion and 1.7 billion in the next 2 years. So this is just a huge blow. We've all seen how spotty city services are, even with the $12.3 billion to spend. And so I think people are pretty worried about what this huge drop in revenue will mean.
I mean, at the same time, though, there are a lot of cities of our size that don't have $10 billion budgets. Don't you think there's a way we can make it? Like, it just seems to me as an average person, and I also, I've interviewed a lot of these people, so I've also asked the question, but from like the average San Franciscan, they might hear that and say, we can't get this job, we can't run the city with $10 billion. Don't you think that's enough? What do you think we say to those folks?
I'm frustrated by that too. I mean, I think the city should be able to do a lot better job than it does.
$10 billion, that's a lot of money.
I could do a lot with $12 billion.
Yeah.
But the part of the problem is pensions are huge. City salaries are really high. It used to be that people went into the public sector because they would get good benefits and a comfortable retirement, and now they get way into the six figures and those other benefits. So I think there's definitely some bloating, but.
And do you think that do you perceive that that's something that's going to get addressed or talked about or thought about as a result of this shortfall?
I think everything will have to be on the table because those are huge cuts that will have to be made. The mayor's already directed her department heads to start thinking about serious cuts, and already I think some of our departments are so stretched thin. Like Muni is short several hundred bus drivers. They can't even drive all the buses that are supposed to be on the schedule because they don't have the bodies to do them. So I don't know how they're going to fix this, but it's going to be really problematic.
Okay, I wanted to take a step back and just kind of, I'm interested in what it's like to report on politics in a time of crisis like this, just kind of ethically and also philosophically. Like, how do you think your job and your role has changed or shifted since this all started? And also, how do you think about that role and responsibility right
now? It's a good question. I really try to, tell the truth and find, the scary parts that are part of this, new daily life we have here in San Francisco, but also mix in the fact that I do feel hopeful and I do think that we're better situated than other cities because we have a strong public health department. We believe in science. We don't think this is a hoax. We care about all people. We're mostly compassionate. And so I think that I've written before that we are better suited to weather this than a lot of cities are. And so I'm trying to keep people somewhat hopeful.
Yeah. And I think also just San Francisco compares itself to New York a lot. And just because, it's the other, we just do it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And New York is struggling right now. And San Francisco in some ways is not, right? We're struggling economically, but we've been able to avoid some of the pain that's happening in New York, at least for the short term. We don't know. And so I do feel like from the conversations that I'm having, people are proud of the way in which we've addressed this and how seriously we address this, which is causing some faith in our city leaders.
Yeah. I credit Mayor Breed and Grant Colfax, the director of the public health department. He weathered the AIDS crisis. That's always in the back of his mind. He, came of age during that horrible time. And so I did an interview with him where he was talking about just seeing these first reports out of China about this kind of mysterious virus back in December. And he did not dismiss it like so many Americans did, or think like that's not our problem. He was following that data. He quoted data, science, and facts. He's all about that. And so he was just following the data ever since then and really pushing for early action, declaring an emergency in February before we even had any cases, and then shutting down the city in March. We still didn't have a lot of cases, but they saw that this was the only way to stem the problem.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a little bit of a tough question.
Okay.
How does it feel to be be on the other side of this, by the way?
Oh, being asked the questions?
Yeah.
I like asking questions better, but I've already asked you questions before on my podcast. So
yes, I'm getting
turnabout is fair play.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. I think there's going to be a point where the politics and the public health kind of start to become in tension. And that's going to, and we've now shut the city down for a month and a half, right? And if we do not see a, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. If we do not see I think I muted myself. Did I?
I can hear you.
Oh, no, okay. So if we don't see a surge, or if we see the surge and the surge is, down, there's going to be a lot of pressure, I think, from folks, maybe even like me, who have small businesses that we can't be closed forever. And there starts to get a point where it's like, it seems like we've done what we were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. I understand, public health officer, that you'd like us to be more careful or more cautious, or it would be great if we can wait another month. But at some point it's like, we need to reopen our city. We need to get on with it a little bit. And so I'm not saying that's how I feel right now. And I think we're all in lockstep that we need to do. We're all kind of holding each other. Well, not physically holding each other, but you get it.
Yeah.
We're doing what's being asked. But I think there's going to get a point where people are like, enough is enough. The curve hasn't happened, or the surge hasn't happened, or we had the surge and we were able to do it well. And how do you think, when do you think that point's going to come? And also, what do you think is going to happen? And also, how do we, I guess, what are your predictions on that? And do you agree with me? And where do you think it's going to go?
I do agree with you. I think that this is already devastating for the economy. People have already lost their jobs. Businesses have already shut permanently. I've heard several examples of those. I think people are understanding why we're doing this right now. But I think you're right that if the surge doesn't bear out, or we surpass it and they still want us to stay home, people are going to be pretty frustrated. I mean, some families have zero money coming in right now at all, and you just can't last like that forever. And so I think also families are concerned about kids, like if they already are going to miss, 6 weeks of school, what does it mean to not go back at all this school year?
Right.
How will they be ready to start next school year,
right.
If they've already lost so much time? So there will be these real questions. And I think the City Hall recognizes that. They're definitely prioritizing our health first. I don't know when it's going to turn, and then they'll think about these other questions too.
Okay, so we're going to get to folks' questions for Heather in just a minute, but I want to do a very quick lightning round because that's
like I made you do.
Exactly. All right, favorite place to get takeout or delivery during shelter in place?
We did North Beach pizza the other night. Always love that. Their combo pizza is really good. We're big fans of Shanghai dumpling. My boy can eat like unlimited numbers of dumplings. It can get very expensive, but
Favorite place to go on a socially distanced walk during shelter in place?
oh, they have just shut the roads at Twin Peaks. There are no cars, no tour buses, and no puddles of shattered glass right now for like the first time ever. I took my boys up there yesterday. Plenty of space to run, bike, walk, beautiful views. I know this sucks for all of us, but I think it's really great for nature. Like the air is just so clear right now.
Mm-hmm.
The birds are so loud. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's a great time to be outside in some ways.
Room in your house that you are totally sick of that you never want to spend any more time in after this is over?
I can't say that. I'm lucky to have an excellent husband and 2 lovely children.
Oh, I just, you could say like the pantry, like I don't want to spend any more time in my kitchen.
Oh, I
Okay.
thought you said a person in my house.
Not person. No, 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 no.
Oh.
Room. What room in your house are you sick of?
Oh, room in my house. I'm kind of sick of the whole thing. I want to go do something else.
Okay. And weirdest hobby that you've picked up since this all started, or behavior?
I'm doing a lot of live stream yoga classes. I always love yoga, but it's really cool that a lot of teachers are taking their classes online, and I got my little boys to try it out with me, which was pretty amusing.
Okay, and last one is what book are you reading right now?
I just finished She Said by the 2 women reporters at the New York Times who broke the Harvey Weinstein story, so that's very inspiring to me.
Awesome. And if I think of any more lightning round questions, I reserve the right to ask them to you. All right, let's get to some of these questions. Barack wants to know, San Francisco revenue has gone up by $1 billion a year for the last couple of years, and yet we still have a shortfall. What causes this, and how can we reform the budget process? How much do government pensions play a role?
Pensions play a huge role. Also, health for life plays a big role. The retirement health care and pensions are huge chunks of money that we don't even completely have funded. So we actually owe money on those long term. And just the high salaries, the fact that we employ so many people, it just adds up, and the cost of everything goes up. And so even though residents don't see any changes for the better in terms of the services we're getting, everything is more expensive year to year, including salaries and pensions, and so that's a big reason.
I mean, this is a delicate question to ask, but like, do you feel like there's just too many people working? Because it seems like at the same, I hear there's so much to do and we're understaffed completely, but then I also hear like what you just said, there's so many people working for City Hall and all that adds up. Is it both, or do you feel like certain departments have too many people and certain departments are understaffed?
I'd like to see way fewer bureaucrats making $200,000 and $300,000 and way more people doing the real man on the street work that we need. The areas I would point out especially are bus drivers and homeless outreach workers, case managers, social workers. We need more of those and less of the big bucks people.
100%. Hunter wants to know how you think the pandemic crisis will affect the Nuru corruption probe.
Mohammed Nur is probably happy that he's been out of the headlines for a long time. And that was convenient for him. I'm sure we'll follow it, but it's not the top priority right now.
And that building inspection guy, just like,
I know.
Talk about timing. Kelsey, I mean, you have to do a lightning round. Oh yes, we did that, Kelsey. An anonymous question. I think it has become from an anonymous attendee. I think it has become apparent that declaring shelter in place relatively early was the right thing to do, and city leaders seem to pride themselves in the fact they did so. Knowing city leaders well, do you think that there's danger of our city leaders getting complacent in addressing the economic problems sure to arise once the public health aspect of this crisis is over? Kind of a similar vein of my question, but yes. Are you worried about complacency?
I worry that complacency will return in the long term, but I think the economic crisis is short term enough that they will keep up this energy and kind of can-do spirit to tackle it as well. They're already talking about not only getting through this crisis, but the recovery that comes after it. So I think they're kind of considering that a 1-2 part.
Great. Sarab asks how you think this will change the city in the near future, like the next 12 months.
it's going to be really bad economically. I'm really worried about all the small businesses, restaurants, bookstores that will close. I think they're some of the most special parts of San Francisco. I mean, Green Apple Books, Balboa Theater, all these places that are just so dear to us and make our city kind of worth living in. I'm really worried that a lot of them just won't survive this shutdown.
Yeah. Also, I'm yes, 100%, and obviously that's something that I'm thinking a lot about as well. Also, Sarab, I think in the next 12 months, I think small businesses are what make San Francisco particularly rich and amazing. But also some of our large events and gatherings that bring our amazing city together may not be happening over the next 12 months, or at least short term. We don't know what's going on with Pride. Beta Breakers isn't happening. We also, there's an election in the fall, and that's something that I'm thinking a lot about, gathering people around. And so, when I think of what the parts of San Francisco I love, I think of our street festivals. I think of our large gatherings. I think of outside lands. I think these things where a lot of us can finally see each other. I'm nervous about what life will be like without some of those.
Me too. I was really looking forward to going to opening day for the Giants on Friday. That's not happening. So much of the best stuff is just not happening at all right now. So that sucks.
And I think it's important for us to remember there will, as hard as this year is going to be, there will be next year, and these things will be back, and we will all be here, I hope, and we will enjoy them even more. Joe asks, San Francisco's budget has nearly doubled in the last decade. Why isn't there a larger rainy day fund, considering there's been such a dramatic increase in revenue? Great question, Joe.
Yes, there should be. Another thing to consider is that we just passed Prop E, which limits the amount of office space that can be built in regards to how much affordable housing will be built. And that's projected to be a big drop in revenue for the city as well, which is it was passed before this all became so bad. And so I'm kind of wondering how that plays out. But we should have more on hand. And I especially wish we had more on hand to help the public schools. City Hall isn't technically responsible for them, legally, but I feel like we should be responsible for them morally.
Yeah. Also, there's the rainy day thing, and then also I was told, and I actually didn't know this, that there's something about the city finances that we are not allowed to go into debt. We're not allowed to be in debt for things other than infrastructure building, and so where Governor Cuomo yesterday was saying, he's gonna maybe short-term borrow a bunch of money in order to pay for things that he needs. For some reason, the San Francisco city can't go into debt in order to pay certain things.
That's right. We legally have to have a balanced budget that is supposed to be passed every summer. They've delayed the process by 2 months. Just today, I think they announced that. So it'll be slowed down a little bit, but we can't not have a balanced budget. It's not legal under city charter. So unlike the federal government, which can go trillions into debt, as we all know, we can't do that. So that's going to be hard.
Do you think that should change? I mean, isn't debt necessary for times like this where we need to pull ourselves out of a crisis?
Yeah, I could see that argument. I haven't thought about that a lot, but it's a good point.
Kelsey wants to know, how have these times changed the way that the Cron staff works together and reports on stories? What does the Cron see its role to be in this time?
It's been a huge change. You can probably see I'm not in the newsroom. We're usually all either at Fifth and Mission in our newsroom or at various bureaus like City Hall. But for the first time in our 155-year history, we closed our newsroom. Oh. So we have not missed a day, though. We're still publishing in print and obviously online every day, and we will continue to do so. Hearst, the company that owns us in New York, has been very supportive financially, and advertising is way down, but we're actually seeing a huge rise in subscriptions. People are just needing news right now more than ever. And so I think people are appreciating journalism and realizing that they need to support it.
Yep. And operator, if you don't mind adding that subscription link to the Chronicle in the chat box for all the folks who are tuned in to become subscribers, that would be great. I'm a subscriber and proud of it. Joe also wants to know, do you know if there are any conversations going on about the city trying to take advantage of potential housing or mortgage crisis to purchase more units for affordable housing?
I have not heard that, but that's a good idea too.
Barbara wants to know, any comments on whether anti-Chinese or Asian sentiment will continue, or how to combat it?
That's another thing that the public health department and the rest of the city just tackled early on. They were not taking any of this racism. People were especially being horrible in Chinatown and saying like, you can't go to Chinatown or you're going to get the virus. Businesses there lost money way earlier than businesses in any other part of San Francisco. And from the get-go, the city was putting out, public messages that this is not tied to a particular group of people, that, prejudice is not accepted in San Francisco. And so they tried to shut that down.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the last question. And one of the other running themes of this has been, obviously San Francisco has been through tough times before, both in recent history and in our whole history from almost the very beginning. And if you look at the history of San Francisco, there have been, out of the ashes has come kind of a new life has been breathed into the city. The first interview we did was with Heklina, the drag queen, and she said that after the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco, there was a bit of a gay renaissance where people were kind of coming back in new and fresh and interesting ways. And I guess, do you think that we might see something like that come out of this? Are you hopeful for that? And then the second part of the question is there a way that we can be a part of facilitating that?
Yeah, our city flag has the phoenix rising from the ashes. That's what San Francisco has always been about. We've been through terrible things before and we've always emerged stronger. I think we get complacent in the good times and stronger in the bad times. A great example of that was the 1906 earthquake, which killed thousands of people and left half of the city homeless. And 5 years later, the President of the United States came to break ground for the World's Fair, which is why we still have the Palace of Fine Arts. The World's Fair was held in 1915, and when the president broke ground, he dubbed us the city that knows how, because we had just overcome this huge challenge, and then we're having a fair and inviting the whole world. So nothing says it better than that for San Francisco, and I feel like hopefully that will happen again.
The city that knows how. I love that. The city that knows how. Let's let's make the city leaders of 1906 proud with how we're going to come out of this, the phoenix out of the ashes.
Let's do it. Let's host another World's Fair.
Let's host another World's Fair. Let's continue to be the city that knows how. Well, for all those who have tuned in, thank you so much. You can click on the link in the chat box, joinit.org/o/Manny's, to become a sponsor of Manny's, my small business. It's $36 a month, and we could use your help to get through this time. You can make a one-time donation as well. It's very much appreciated, and we need it. You can also, if you're not a subscriber to the Chronicle, now is the time to subscribe to the Chronicle and allow them to continue to do the excellent reporting they've been doing for 155 years. We need them. If you like this conversation, you can tag us at Welcome to Manny's. You can tag Heather Knight at Heather Knight.
HKnightSF on Twitter.
HKnightSF on Twitter. Thank you to Sam for being the operator of this conversation, as well as Jubert and Ram from our team. All right, Heather, keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.